Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanam Bhunattu Sahaviryam Kuruvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastama Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Jnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanushalakaya Chakshuram Militam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamin Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharini Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashyati Deshatharine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So welcome back to the weekly Sunday reading of Bhagavad Gita. Every Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard in the USA. So this week we are going into chapter 12. Chapter 12 is titled Bhakti Yoga. A very quick recap of chapter 11, preview of chapter 12, and that is, excuse me a second, chapter 12. So last week in chapter 11, you can see the video on YouTube, we read about the universal form. At the end of that chapter, Arjuna was asking, remember Arjuna watched, he saw the universal form, he was impressed, but it was not something that resonated with him. He then wanted to see the form of the Lord that is within each and every atom, which is in the heart of every living being, that four-armed form of Vishnu. So Krishna revealed and showed the four-armed form. And then reverted back to the two-armed form of Parthasarati of Krishna. And Krishna goes on to say that seeing this form, one cannot understand this form by studying the Vedas, by doing Mandir Puja, by austerities, by charity. He says, you cannot see me and understand me through those processes. And then the very last verse of chapter 11, Krishna says, the only way one can understand me, can see me as I am, can understand the mystery of my divinity, supremacy, and so on, is through bhakti, or love. And that then leads into chapter 12, Bhakti Yoga. Now, it's very important to say and to understand that before we begin reading Bhakti Yoga, very briefly, the chapter of Bhakti Yoga, is that Bhakti Yoga is not a process as such, like Jnana Yoga or Ashtanga Yoga. It's not a set process of how you do Bhakti. You don't do Bhakti Yoga. Oftentimes in the spiritual community, we see Bhakti Yoga is described as having a kirtan. Really, that's what it's boiled down to in this day and age. Having kirtan in the evening and feeling some kind of emotions. That is, we won't go into what that is, be that as it may. Bhakti Yoga, Bhakti is about your motivation. Bhakti is the why that you do. It's not the what, it's the why. Whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer, whatever you give away, do that. Krishna says, this is back in the 9th chapter, Krishna says, whatever you do that as an offering. Do that in love. Right? Krishna says, if one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, fruit, or water, I will accept it. It's why. Bhakti is the why of everything you do. So bhakti is not a process of A, B, C, and do this, do that. After you do that, you do this, after that. It's not like that. Bhakti is developing a mentality. What is the motivation behind everything that you do in life? If the motivation is love, That's what Krishna is reciprocating with. So bhakti is about the motivation with which you do anything, every choice you make, every decision you take up. It's about motivation. That's why we'll see in the Bhagavad Gita, there's no real set practice of bhakti. There's no step-by-step practice of bhakti yoga per se. You can do anything with the motivation of bhakti and it becomes bhakti yoga. The motivation being love. So let's get right into it. Chapter 12, text number 1. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? A very good question, because remember in the last chapter about the universal form, Vishvarup Darshana Yoga, Arjuna wanted to see the universal form and how the Supreme is physically manifest in this universal reality. But there's also an unmanifest form or unmanifest feature of the Supreme. So Arjuna has seen the manifested version, the manifested form, that's in the Virat Rupa, the universal form, as uplifting and simultaneously terrifying as it was. Arjuna has seen the manifested physical form of the Lord in this world. He now asks about the unmanifested feature of the Supreme that we cannot readily see with our eyes, we cannot perceive with our senses. What is that like? What is that all about? Therefore, Arjuna asks this question. Which individuals are considered to be more perfect? Those who are always engaged in bhakti, or those who worship and pursue the impersonal Brahman, or the unmanifested feature of the Supreme? Krishna replies, text 2, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. So Krishna is saying, those who develop a relationship of love with me, I consider to be most perfect. He explains why. Texts 3 and 4. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed, and immovable, the impersonal conception of the absolute truth, by controlling the various senses, being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all, at last achieve me. So it's just a different path. It's not about right or wrong. It's just a different path. Krishna further explains why, what makes it different. The path of bhakti with the relationship with the Supreme, and the path of spiritual development focused on the unmanifested, impersonal feature, or Brahman feature. Text 5, Krishna says, for those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. Indeed, to make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. We are in a body. So to then try to connect with and have realization on the unmanifest feature of the Supreme, it's challenging. Not impossible, as Krishna said earlier, one can at last come to and achieve me and achieve a relationship. But it's just a bit more difficult because we are embodied. We are living in a reality of a material body, and therefore the distractions of a material body do not lend to the development of realization of the unmanifest. It's not the suitimum, it's not the optimum reality, the existence in a material body, for development and appreciation and realization of the unmanifested. Texts 6 and 7. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, or bhakti, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So basically, Krishna is saying, and this is all about love. What's your motivation, right? Bhakti is about the why you're doing everything that you're doing. If you're motivated by love of the Supreme, then Krishna is saying, for them I am the swift deliverer. Now, it's very important that this idea of Krishna being the swift deliverer, it's not that one goes to having, one wants to have a loving relationship so that one can be delivered from birth and death. This is referring back to what's going on, or what has been going on in the 11th chapter, wherein Arjuna, remember, he's seeing all of the warriors dying in the battle of Kurukshetra. And Krishna is saying they're already dead. This is a foregone conclusion. Arjuna is not bewildered by that. He's taken aback by that. That Krishna, you're saying, remember Krishna said, time I am, the destroyer of all the worlds. It seems like there is an inevitability there that Arjuna is trying to square. If destruction, if you, my dear Krishna, being time, are inevitable destruction, then what's going to save us? That's what Krishna is reacting to or responding to in this verse. Krishna is saying, yes, time I am. I'm going to wipe out all of creation. However, the person who exists in bhakti, the person who has that relationship with me in bhakti, for them, I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death, which means it's irrelevant. The bhakti yogi does not succumb, is not lost in this cycle, this perpetual cycle of birth and death. No, the bhakti yoga transcends it. He or she transcends the cycle of birth and death, and time has no sway over the bhakti yogi. Text 8. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of God, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me always without doubt. In other words, time is not a factor. In a relationship of love with the Supreme, time, this so-called destroyer of all, as Krishna described back in the 11th chapter, has no effect on the bhakti yogi. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of bhakti yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. Now, at the very beginning, I mentioned bhakti yoga is not about this process, this practice, and so on and so forth. It is a why. It is a motivation behind all of our existence, the meaning, the purpose of what we're choosing to do, that which we are doing. So bhakti yoga is the why. But why is Krishna saying here? What Krishna is going through right now, he is saying, if you do not have love for me, then start at this place. If you can't do that, start here. If you can't do that, start here. Krishna recognizes a gradual development, there's a gradual purification where love can exist purely and completely and unconditionally within our heart. Krishna recognizes that. So Krishna is saying, if you're not at a place of pure love, perfectly fine, begin by practicing the regulative principles of bhakti yoga. So how do we square this? Bhakti yoga is about your motivation. What is he talking about, these regulative principles? The regulative principles of bhakti yoga are as follows. Not so much, again, because we're moving towards, or we're working towards understanding motivation, right? Changing our motivation, the why we do what we do. And in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Rupa Goswami describes these practices of devotional service. There are any practices, any spiritual practices, any Vedic practices can be infused with bhakti. So it's not so much the type of what you're doing, it's just that are they infused with bhakti? And there is various stages of this infusion. The first there's 9 stages, where from the beginning to the top, where there's pure love. The first stage of this infusion is your belief system. What do you believe? It's called Shraddha. What do you believe? What is your orientation? Do you believe? What is your worldview? Do you see are you oriented towards there being a God, or are you oriented towards atheism? Are you oriented towards the manifest feature that the Supreme has form, quality, and so on? Or are you oriented towards a non-manifest, an unmanifest Supreme, the Brahman, has no form, has no individuality, has no differentiation? What are you oriented towards? That's the first stage. So work with that orientation. Krishna is saying that's the first step. These are the various process. Develop, engage in the practices of bhakti. In other words, deal with the first, work with their orientation. Recognize that I am a individual, differentiated being, and work on that orientation first. Or address that. What is your orientation? And then address that. Once that's been addressed, then move towards sadhu sangha, being in the association of others who also are trying to develop and to purify the love they have within them and manifest that love. Then bhajana kriya, engage in acts of love. There are all kinds of acts of love for the Supreme. That's a whole other navalakshana, right? Shravanam, kirtanam, vishnu smaranam, hearing, chanting, remember. Those are acts of love to the Supreme. So these are the regulative principles, if you will, of bhakti yoga, starting with Shraddha, then going to bhajana kriya, sadhu sangha, bhajana kriya, going into these various steps, understanding your orientation, hanging out with other like-minded individuals who are centered on love and bhakti, then engaging in acts of love, both to the Supreme and to the world around you. You begin to purify, you begin to come to the place where love manifests spontaneously. Once you get into the higher levels, 7, 8, and 9, love manifests spontaneously. But Krishna is saying here, first there may be a process. Go through the process, love will manifest spontaneously. My dear Arjuna, O winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, which I've just described. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. Text 10. If you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. Right? So if you cannot engage in Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smarana, hearing directly, chanting directly, engaging and remembering directly, if you cannot do those things, those are these practices of bhakti yoga. If you cannot engage in those things, then whatever you do that for me as an offering unto me. Then you will develop a desire. Then you will eventually come to the perfect stage of love. Text 11. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, but then try to act, giving up all results of your work, and try to be self-situated. So Krishna is saying here, you're likely dealing with a lot of distractions. So give up the results, not the work itself. Krishna is not saying karma sannyasa. Karma means work, sannyasa means renounce. Krishna is not saying karma sannyasa. He says, do your work, but manasa sannyasa. Within your consciousness of the mind, give up attachment to the results, because it is highly likely you're distracted by the results of your work, and with that distraction comes an attachment. And therefore, love cannot be manifest within. Bhakti cannot be manifest because you're distracted and attached to impermanent results of your work. So develop manasa sannyasa. Within your mind, give up attachment to the results of your work. Text 12. If you cannot do this, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Right? Krishna is saying, then study, read. There are numerous scriptures describing spiritual reality. Read and just gain familiarity that way. Better than that, however, is meditation. So then Better than reading, however, and just become familiar through reading, meditate on what you read. Sit with it. Anything that you read that has some particular exercises, try those exercises. Go deep into what you're reading and try to live out what you are reading. And better than meditation, this is Krishna's now going back the other way. Better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. He goes back to that. Manasa sannyasa. For such renunciation by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. So if you can't do anything, Krishna says, all right, just read. Read the Bhagavad Gita and just become familiar with the content. As you read, that will slowly shift your orientation, right? That first level. The more you read, the more you become familiar, begin to shift that orientation. You begin to move and develop and progress further. So that is the bare minimum. Just read. Better than that is to meditate. Better than that is manasa sannyas. Give up attachment to the fruits of your activities, because that attachment is disturbing your peace of mind. And without peace, how can you possibly develop and grow and mature and manifest and enact love in the world and in relation with the Supreme? Texts 13 and 14. One who is not envious, but is kind to every living entity, who does not think himself a proprietor and is free from false ego, who is equal in both happiness and distress, who is tolerant, always satisfied, self-controlled, and engaged in devotional service, or bhakti yoga, with determination, their mind and intelligence fixed on me, such a devotee of mine is very dear to me. There's a reciprocation. That's what love is. Love is a reciprocation. Text 15. He or she by whom no one is put into difficulty and who is not disturbed by anyone, who is equipoised in happiness and distress, fear and anxiety, is very dear to me. There's a reciprocal relationship is beginning to develop where we become dear to the Supreme. It is not that just we are loving on the Supreme. No, we are becoming dear to Krishna. This is how we become dear to the Supreme. Text 16. My devotee who is not dependent on the ordinary course of activities, who is pure, expert, without cares. In other words, without attachments. Not without cares, without attachments is a better way of seeing that. Free from all pains and not striving for some result is very dear to me. The striving from a result does not mean you do not want to, the result of your activity does not come to pass. It is just that whether or not the result of your activity comes to pass does not negatively impact your ability to manifest love. That's what that means. That if there is success or failure, you are going to be the embodiment of love, the embodiment of bhakti, regardless. That's what that means. Text 17. One who neither rejoices nor grieves, who neither laments nor desires, and who renounces both auspicious and inauspicious things, such a devotee is very dear to me. This doesn't mean we hear a lot about spiritual bypassing where you do not express remorse or things like that. No. It's not that we do not grieve. The English here is causing us to trip up. It doesn't mean that the bhakti yogi does not feel. Of course the bhakti yogi feels. The bhakti yogi feels truly better than anyone. But they feel the right things, so to speak, right? And we use a phrase here, crying over spilt milk. The bhakti yogi does not cry over spilt milk. That's what Krishna is saying here. Neither rejoices over a cup full of milk, nor cries over a cup of spilt milk, because it's just spilt milk. What is auspicious, what is inauspicious in this world is spilt milk, right? Lamenting or desiring for a cup of milk is insignificant. The bhakti yogi does grieve, the bhakti yogi does feel, the bhakti yogi does have cares, but cares over things that are related to bhakti, pure, genuine, eternal love. That's where there is care, not over spilled, not over these temporary situations in the material world. You deal with them. Krishna, back in the second chapter, Krishna called it winter and summer, right? Winter and summer goes. Winter, you deal with it. Summer, you deal with it. It doesn't change the fact that I walk in love. Text 18 and 19. One who is equal to friends and enemies, who is equipoised in honor and dishonor, heat and cold, happiness and distress, fame and infamy, who is always free from the contaminating association, always silent, satisfied with anything, who doesn't care for any residence, who is fixed in knowledge, and who is engaged in bhakti, such a person is very dear to me. Don't be befuddled by this particular verse and verses like this. Heat, cold, what do you mean I can't, of course I'm going to be affected by heat. Krishna is not talking about experiencing heat and cold. Krishna is not talking about experiencing honor and dishonor and how to move past it, how to move through it, Krishna is not talking about that. Krishna is talking about do not let those things dissuade you from manifesting and living in love. That's all. That's all. Bhakti is beyond. If bhakti is dependent upon heat, cold, honor, dishonor, this, that, or the other, it's not bhakti. It's not bhakti. It's a figment of one's ahankar or false ego. Attachments in this world. That's what it's based on, attachment and aversion. You like this, you don't like that. This serves my purpose, this doesn't. So Krishna is saying all these things, hot, cold, friends, enemies, honor, dishonor, fame, infamy, all these things, yes, you're going to experience them. They're going to happen. But despite, no matter what is happening, no matter what the external reality, you always, without question, exist and choose love. Such a person, Krishna says, is very dear to me. That's when we have Krishna eating out of our hands. We see all the stories of the great Bhakti yogis. All have Krishna eating out of their hands. And not in a derogatory way. It's a mutual, reciprocal, loving relationship, as it should be. Final verse, and then we'll end here. Text 12, into the chapter. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service, Bhakti Yoga, and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. Making me, meaning making love the supreme goal, are very dear to me. We have a loving relationship. What is very interesting about this verse, and this is the last verse of chapter 20, Bhagavad Gita, Bhakti Yoga, Krishna doesn't use the term Bhakti Yoga in this verse. Krishna says, those who follow this imperishable path of Bhakti Yogi. He doesn't. He does not say, Krishna does not say, those who follow this imperishable path of Bhakti Yoga. You know what he calls it? Krishna calls it Dharmamrita. Dharmamrita. Those who follow this imperishable path of Dharmamrita are very dear to me. What is Dharmamrita? Dharma means principles of righteous living, let's say. There are 4 principles of Siddharana Dharma, of basic Dharma, right? Self-mastery, purity, compassion, and truthfulness. In the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I come every yuga to reestablish the principles of Dharma. So that's what Dharma is. Principles of righteousness. Dharmamrita, Amrita means the nectar, the essence of Dharma. So Dharma is not enough. We have to add bhakti, love, to Dharma. Dharma by itself is not enough. The entire stories of the Mahabharata, if you know the stories of the Mahabharata, if you know the stories of the Ramayana, 2 very wonderful stories in Hindu spirituality. If you listen to and know those stories, they're all about dharma. And there's all kinds of debates about dharma. Is this right? Is this wrong? How to do this in this situation? Is this dharmic? Is that adharma? Is this righteous? Is this irreligious or non-righteous? You can go back and forth to the end of time as to what is dharma, what is not dharma. Dharma is the beginning, but it's not enough. Dharma will set you in the right direction. Dharma will send you north. But dharma itself does not prepare you for the obstacles you are going to encounter while traversing that path. For that, you have to add bhakti. You have to add love. In other words, why are you walking the path of dharma? That why is love. That's dharmamrita. The essence of dharma is to take dharma, you walk the path, you add love. That is dharmamrita. Now you walk that path. You head in that direction, armed with love. Now you're going to reach the destination of being able to manifest, to exist, to choose love. So remember, going back to the very beginning of this chapter, when I was saying, bhakti is not about do that, do this, do that, do this. Bhakti means, why are you doing it? What is your motivation? Well, that's the question. The motivation is bhakti. The motivation is love, because that's Krishna's motivation. Krishna's motivation is all about love. It's all about bhakti, all about love. So we'll end there, and I will see you next Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll go on to chapter 13. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyaya Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Jana Sambhade Bhakti Yoga Nama Dvarasham Adhyaya Om Sahana Vavatu Sahana Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karuvavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti